Hello. This sermon audio is a ministry of the Town Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. If you would like to learn more about us, how to connect, or how to support us, go to our website, thetownchurch.org. While listening to the Bible preached is a healthy part of our spiritual formation, it is not the whole picture. So if you aren't a part of a local church, we encourage you to prayerfully commit to a local body of believers where you live. We're glad you can join us, and we hope God uses the following sermon to reveal more of His glory to you.
Hey, welcome back to the Afterword. I am here. Wow, I was expecting interruption and it didn't happen.
He did it
you were checking your
silently.
phone.
No, I was trying to get to the passage.
Oh, he just texted me. Hey, thank you.
No, I want to be unpredictable.
I know that about you. Yes. I'm here. It's predictable that you're unpredictable. I'm Rex. I'm sitting here with Vince, Kirsten, and Eric. And this podcast exists for us to look back at the passage that was just preached. The idea here is that we ask some more questions of it and maybe get a deeper understanding, kind of like what stood out to us, what is God like according to this text, and how do we apply it. But before we get going, we usually ask a get-to-know-you question. And the get-to-know-you question is, what do you like about my coffee mug that I brought?
I like it.
That actually, listener, this one's for you. Could you call in and tell me what you like about the coffee mug that's sitting next to me? That would be great.
You just have to guess what it looks like.
Guess.
This is Rex stalling
material.
because he didn't come up with an intro question. We see right past your garbage.
I appreciate that. And you're right. Yes, I did not. Okay, so the summer is kind of rounding out here. The crazy of like, hey, we got to squeeze every bit of life and sunshine and adventure out of summer is sort of coming to an end. School's right around the corner. What are you excited about for the fall?
I mean, my same answers. Last week, cooler weather.
Pumpkin spice lattes. I love my pumpkin spice lattes.
I feel like I could ask like, hey, what's your favorite food? And you'd say cooler weather.
Cooler weather. I am excited for cooler weather, but I'm also excited for. I just love everything about fall. I think.
Name like three things.
Cooler weather. But seriously, cooler weather.
Number one, cooler weather. Number two, not hot weather.
It's not as hot as.
Number three, weather in which I can wear clothes that are warmer because it is cooler outside.
That pretty much nails it. No, cool. I mean the tree's changing. Windows open at night and you get chilly.
Oh, that's nice.
Sometimes in the fall we get to have a fire in the fireplace. That's one of my favorites. We live relatively close to Rocky Mountain High School, and like you hear on Friday nights the band playing and the football announcers, and there's just something that feels so like fall about that. I love it.
Yep.
Number one thing, changing colors. Number two thing, cooler weather.
Of the leaves.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant, but I didn't want to assume.
Changing colors of the leaves.
Got it. Cool.
He wasn't talking about his new job at Sherwin-Williams.
I changed the colors of
He changed the colors
So
of
if
things.
the leaves changed, but it was still 100 million degrees.
I would find joy in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would deplete my joy. I'm going to be honest.
I enjoy watching our boys play soccer in the fall. There you go.
Cool.
How about you?
Do you enjoy watching them play soccer any other time of year?
Not as much.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I think I'm excited about fall. Like brings a sense of like rhythm. I think people are around more. The summer here is people scatter, that kind of thing. So I'm excited for like, I don't know. It's hard to say everything, but I'm excited about kind of the rhythm that comes with fall, of like townships and regular meetings with people. People are around on Sunday mornings more. So it seems like in the summer you see someone and then a couple weeks go by and then you see him again. And so it'll be cool to kind of have everyone around, kind of back to normal. This week we looked at 3 kind of successive interactions with Jesus and the disciples. Mm-hmm. And it kind of doesn't paint them in a great picture. But let me read it real quick and then we'll talk about it. On the next day, this is Luke chapter 9 still, starting in verse 37. It says, "On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. And behold, a man from the crowd cried out, 'Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth, and shatters him, and will hardly leave him. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not.' Jesus answered, 'O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here.' While he was coming, the demon threw him to the ground and convulsed him. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astonished at the majesty of God. But while they were all marveling at everything he was doing, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men.' But they did not understand this saying, and it was concealed from them, so that they might not perceive it. And they were afraid to ask him about this saying. An argument arose among them as to which of them was the greatest. But Jesus, knowing the reasoning of their hearts, took a child and put him by his side, and said to them, 'Whoever receives this child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. For he who is least among you all is the one who is great.' John answered, 'Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not follow us.' But Jesus said to him, 'Do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you.'" This is God's word. All right, Vince, give us real quick, like minute or two summary. Like, where'd you go with this morning?
Yeah, it's 3 different interactions, like you said, or 3 different sections where what we see of the disciples is their failure, their inability to do what the Father is asking them, their inability to understand, and their inability to be humble. And it's interesting on the heels of what we saw last week of Jesus' glory. And I think it just Luke is showing us, Jesus is showing the disciples and us that their inability puts them in a place of need of him.
Yeah.
The end.
Good stuff. Well, what stood out in this passage? I want to say, before anyone else answers, like you pointed out, and it really stands out if you read Luke 9 from front to back, the journey the disciples have been on in this chapter is wild, because it starts with them being told by Jesus, "Hey, go do the things you've seen me do."
Yeah.
And they come back rejoicing, and they're excited. And then there's the feeding of the 5,000 where Jesus provides in ways that are kind of unheard of. Then there's the transfiguration where it's like they see Jesus in glory.
Right.
And then like all that is kind of all rise. They're seeing Jesus do stuff through them. They're seeing him do things he hasn't done and reveal himself in glory. But then there's this, and it's sort of like a huge deflation compared to the rest of it.
Yeah.
What a ride.
What's that?
What a ride.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think that's, I think it's intentional from Luke to show us that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing that stood out to me today as well, is just considering what the highs and lows, the roller coaster that they're on, and specifically the argument about who's the greatest, and just thinking, I just wonder if a piece of it is that they had just gone out and they'd healed all these people and had maybe thought that was something within them that they were able to do. And then they came back and they couldn't heal the boy with epilepsy. And so that was a really humbling experience in front of a lot of people. Yeah. And so there's like this almost shame that comes with that. And so there's this posturing that comes. So I don't know. I don't think I've put together the pieces there of just the timing of all of that, and considering just the emotional roller coaster that they're on, but also just their deep humanity, that they had a very public failure there in not being able to heal someone when they had just gone out and healed a bunch of people. And so they're looking for their significance in that moment.
One of them was like, "I healed a guy with leprosy." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, well I healed a guy with tumors." It's like, what you got? Yeah.
I think another thing that stood out was whenever John said we saw someone casting out demons in your name and we tried to stop him because he does not follow with us. And Jesus said to him, do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you. And that just made me think of the church in America today. And it feels like we're spending a lot of time arguing about secondary and tertiary issues rather than the things that we agree on. And I think that the enemy is using that to just divide the church and divide people, because this is the way I see it. Well, this is the way I see it, rather than saying, actually, we all call on Jesus. So let's start with our similarities and where we're unified, rather than calling out all the ways that we're divided.
Yeah, Jesus says something in verse 41 that I don't like. Right? It doesn't feel good.
Take that up with him, not
anyway.
us.
Yeah. Maybe
It's an airing of grievances.
And Jesus is, this is his response to the Father who asked Jesus to cast out the demon that his disciples couldn't. Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? It feels like Jesus doesn't want to be with us because we have pushed his patience too long or something of that sort. But that feels out of character for so much of else that we read about Jesus. Did you come across anything in your study or any thought given to that at all? That might ease my emotional response.
I've always felt that too. It always felt like a harsh response.
Yeah,
and so I've been confused by that.
Yeah, I mean, we see Psalms like that, right? Where there's that kind of harsh, what feels like harsh language. How long will this go on? How long must I be patient with you? That sort of thing. And I just wonder. Yeah, no, I didn't come across anything about it. But like you said, it doesn't seem to jive with the character of Jesus. So I think we have to read it through that lens also. What is Jesus getting at? And I mean, it is a call to his disciples primarily. At least that's how I read it. So his disciples have been called to be with him. He goes from that into where he foretells his death too. So it seems like there's this, how long am I to be with you and bear with you, where that in some ways feels a little bit like he's also hinting at what's to come too. I'm not going to be with you for long. That the time is limited. How long is this going to last? Are you going to be faithless through this whole thing? But I have no comforting words for either of you. Sorry.
I think the comfort for me is that he still healed the boy. Like it seemed like he was impatient, and yet he still just showed kindness. And so I don't understand that comment either, and I never have. It feels like he is irritated.
Yeah, it feels really jarring as you read through.
Yeah, but it didn't affect his love and the way that he expressed that love.
I'm wondering, like, if this frustration here is with the disciples, because that also brings up, like, if Jesus sent them out with authority to do stuff with his own authority, then why couldn't they, like, take care of this? And so it's almost like you wonder if just because of the context, again, with them bickering over who's the greatest, over his death, them not understanding his death, over Peter, James, and John getting to go on the special trip up the mountain that the others are, like, wondering about. You must wonder if this is another outpouring of that. They're like, yeah, we got this. I don't know. I don't know that. But that's kind of where my brain goes. If he's just frustrated with the disciples who still aren't getting it. But then that makes me, because it says, like, in verse 44 and 45, it says they didn't understand and it was concealed from them. So it's like he's frustrated with them, but there's also something
that he's withholding
from them. So yeah, it's interesting. It's curious that they haven't quite gotten it, because it seems like Peter just got it when he says you were the Christ of God, but apparently they still don't get it. and apparently they're counting on this authority that Jesus gave them, making them special from everything that's going on here. So I don't know.
How do you think he should have responded? If that's jarring, what should he have done? Well, how should he have responded?
Yeah, correct Jesus, Eric. Come on.
No, I mean, what? I'm just curious what you and Kirsten both said this. What you would be expecting there, if there is a lack of faith that's caused them to not be able to carry out what Jesus has given them power and authority to do. What should have I won't put that on you. What response are you expecting?
Well, I mean, I think this parallel passage in Mark 9, Jesus says some of these things can only be handled through prayer. And so I know you try to just stick with the context of this gospel account, but I feel like that passage is a little less jarring in the way that Jesus communicates about it. Like, this one seems to be like annoyed, almost like they don't. For me, it implies that if you have enough faith, this could have happened. When Jesus says, some things can only be healed through prayer, that leads me to think that maybe the way they were going about it was, maybe it was just their approach was incorrect, whereas this one seems to imply, the false theology of with enough faith, healing is going to happen.
Yeah, I think what I want Tim have done, which obviously isn't best since he didn't, but something like he does when all the crowds follow him and he's going to go, what seems like he's going to take a break, but all the crowds are following him and he still teaches and he still does and feeds the 5,000. There's still a very warm, welcoming, hey, I'm tired and I want to do something else, but you're here now, let me still spend time with you and heal or whatever it might be. I think that's what I expect. That's not what I get, which tells me there's probably something I'm not understanding about what Luke's doing here.
Yeah, and I think there's a different expectation for his disciples. I mean, even in the feeding of the 5,000, he says, you feed them. And I put that tone in there, but he doesn't say to the disciples, hey, I've got this. Why don't you all sit down too? So I think there's a different expectation of the disciples as he's called them in and he's empowered them and given them authority and they've seen amazing things that he's done. He's called them into a different circle. And so I think there's a different expectation on the disciples than with the crowds. I mean, in many places in the Gospels, it says that Jesus had compassion on the crowds, and he saw them as sheep without a shepherd. But I think there's just a different expectation for this inside circle of disciples that, in some ways, they would have known better. Although it does get to the question or the comment Rex makes of, yeah, but he concealed it from them, so why would they have known? Yeah.
And I think I've always read that too, not being directed to the disciples, but just to the people in general. So that I think it changes it a little bit. It doesn't completely change it,
sure,
but it does change it a bit.
Yeah, I think I've also read it through that lens as well, so it helps to clarify that it was probably spoken to the disciples and not to the crowds that were there.
I will say, again, we're not going into other passages, Gospels at this point. There is some pretty uncuddly stuff that Jesus says at times, though.
Yeah,
that's yeah. Anyway,
well, I think even the comment that he makes to Thomas after the resurrection, and Thomas says, "I won't believe," and I mean his comment to Thomas is, "Don't disbelieve, but believe." That's not like a warm invite. He's saying, "Yeah, stop it." Believe I'm right here. So there's a call to his disciples that's different than to the onlooking crowd.
Get behind me, Satan, to Peter. Probably didn't feel real good.
That one's pretty cuddly, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, after talking about all that, what is God like according to this text?
I think the thing that stands out to me is just that God doesn't need us to participate. It's a privilege that we get, and it's mind-blowing that he chooses to use us, but he doesn't need us. And I think we can also see how easily we can screw things up from human perspective, but we're not going to screw up what God has planned.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in the sermon, but I think the thing that stands out to me is that God is gracious and merciful. I just think about the fact that he chose these guys knowing that this was going to happen. And knowing they were going to respond in these ways, and knowing that they were incomplete in all of the things that, Jesus was going to accomplish, and still he did that. And it gives a lot of hope for people like us, that God's the same toward us, that he's not calling us to be a part of anything because of what we might accomplish or what he thinks we're going to accomplish or whatever. He's called us in spite of that.
Yeah, that's mine too.
I don't know if that's allowed, Eric.
Blue is his favorite color.
I think it was orange, actually, wasn't it?
But
we can get into the philosophy of my colors.
Yeah, that seems.
I don't remember what it was.
Let's spend time on this. I don't know. It stands out to me, and this has been my answer like 3 times. But the kindness of revelation in Christ to us. I think of in verse 48 when they're arguing about who's the greatest. That section, Jesus said, "Hey, whoever receives this child in my name receives me. Whoever receives me receives him who sent me." And so there's this, I don't know, we get the fullness of the Father and of the Spirit in getting Jesus too. And that's wild. Like, it wasn't just a prophet that came. Jesus wasn't just a prophet, wasn't just a teacher, wasn't just a nice guy, as we have just discussed. But there's the fullness of God is in him, and we get him with that. I think that's wild. That sounds so elementary, but I think there's something about like when we believe the gospel, we don't get like just tools for a better life. Like, no, actually, we get God, we get Jesus, we get the Spirit, we get the Father. We get pulled into that, as you've talked about, Eric, which is cool. So there's a generosity here from God. We grabbed. So anyway.
That's the
Jeff.
That's his claim to fame. Hey,
I'm the guy Jesus grabbed.
You
Okay.
are
Cool.
It's like the kid on the front of Nirvana's album.
Yes.
Like it's like
Come back to sue him later.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do we apply this text this week? What do we do with this? There's a lot of the disciples not grasping stuff, not understanding, not being humble. Is the answer here just to try harder?
Yes.
All right, that's it
Yeah.
for this week. Try harder.
It's either try harder or don't mess up.
Yeah, don't mess up.
And in closing,
Yeah.
I think the thing that came to mind for me is I've shared before that anxiety has been a part of my story for a lot of years. And I remember probably, 15 or 20 years ago now, I'd gone through a particularly terrible season with panic attacks and just a ton of anxiety. And I got through it, and I was really angry with God. And I remember praying and just saying, God, this is destroying me. And I don't see any purpose. I don't see any good in this. I don't know how you could ever use this. And I felt like what the Lord said to me in that season was, if you want me to use it, you have to be willing to share it. You have to be willing to be vulnerable with it. And I think a lot of the times we see, I grew up in Christian circles where we all kind of postured to not really actually need Jesus. Talking about your sin was you just didn't do it. You didn't talk about your struggles. You talked about how good God was and how great things were going, but you didn't actually open up about your own suffering and struggles. And so I think that was a paradigm shift for me in understanding that the way that God often is glorified through our suffering and through our struggles is by us being open and bringing other people into that. And so, I think that's the application that I feel is just that I think we need to be in community, and we need to be vulnerable in community of the things that we're actually wrestling through, and not even like whitewash them, but really, really just rip off the Band-Aid and show the grossness to someone and be willing to be vulnerable with that, because I think that's where we see God's glory, and we also begin to see the healing that Christ has to offer when we're able to do that.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna start talking and see if this comes out the right way.
Excited.
Yeah. I think the disciples tried to heal the boy, but they couldn't. Right? I think we would have to assume that, because the man says they couldn't do it. So they tried. I think I appreciate that there's an effort on the disciples' part to do it. They failed for whatever reason. We could talk about that, but Jesus is able to do exactly what the man is asking. And I think from that, it just puts me in this place of a few things. One, it's we're still called to be on the mission that Jesus has called us to be a part of. And we may lack faith at times and may fumble and fail, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try or shouldn't move forward or shouldn't pursue what Jesus has called us to be about. Instead, it should raise our awareness to see that even in our failings, Jesus is far more able than we could even consider. I don't know, that seems super simple, but I think often in my failings, I get to a place of thinking, well, I'm not going to try that again, or I'm not going to do that, or maybe for those listening, you may have this this mindset of like, well, I would never be good enough to be involved in whatever it is, whatever, ministry opportunity or whatever conversation that you might be able to get into with your neighbor or whatever that is. And so because of that, you don't even move forward in trying. I guess I'm encouraged by the disciples. They, even in their lack of faith or their failings, they still tried to do what was being asked of them and what they knew Jesus would already be able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, you and I both kind of reached a point that we realized that we had stopped praying for healing for Solomon.
Yeah.
Because we had prayed for more than a decade that God would heal him, and it seemed like God's answer was no, so we just stopped. And I think we both felt this degree of conviction, in similar timelines of like, God hasn't taken Solomon and he hasn't healed him. And so we just need to
There's still work to be done.
There's still work to be done. And so just that, I think the discouragement when God doesn't seem to be answering is very real, and it's hard to keep trying, because I think when we keep trying, that means we have to keep hoping. And, hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. And so, but the reality is that we don't know what God is planning on doing. And so continuing to press forward in faithfulness, even when the heart does grow sick.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain curiosity about our weaknesses, or a certain sort of embracing of our weaknesses that we get to not ignore, but be wondering what God's going to do in them and through them. How's he going to, and this is your main point in the sermon, like how, in my view, maybe it wasn't, but in my view it was, like what's God doing in them, right? How's he showing you more of himself? How is he growing you? There are huge opportunities in that way, not just something to be avoided.
But Kirsten said they're not just for you either. Like God has something to show others in your weakness. Like Paul, we don't know what Paul's thorn in the flesh was, but we know about it because he wrote about it. Like, and it got sent around to all the churches. Everybody knew Paul was weak in some ways. And so I'm not saying you do the false humility thing where you put yourself down, but there's something about living with real humility, like openness, what you said, Kirsten. I've seen time and time again when I am willing to be open with something, God will use it. Sometimes to reach, the person who struggled with the same thing. Sometimes for grief's sake, whatever. part of my story, my mom died 13 years ago in a car accident, and I have had to walk with that, and grief comes and goes in waves. And part of me being, part of the healing of that for me, not that it's healed, but part of me living with that has been constantly telling God, hey, this is part of my story, be open to. I've been amazed how many people I start talking with in a grocery store who look off and I'm not sure why, and they say, oh yeah, well my mom just died. Or I was in a class and I had a Zoom partner for a class I had to meet up with once a week, and it was the same deal. He gets on, say, man, hey, how's your summer been? And he's like, you don't want to know. And his mom had died like 2 weeks. So like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying like there's something for others in our weaknesses as well. It's not just God will use us and get through it and it'll be, perfect little bow like a Hallmark movie, but like there's something about serving God through those that's powerful.
I mean, his word says he comforts us in our affliction so we in turn can comfort others. And so I think that's a huge piece of, redemption, that we can see that when we do share our weaknesses, when we do share our sorrows and our struggles and our brokenness, like God does bring comfort. And it's often through other people who have walked that road before us. Mm-hmm. And then we do reach a point in which then we start seeing that God is using our own brokenness and our own weakness to comfort others. And so all of that points back to him, but it also is a way that we can see God is working things together for good. Like we would have never chosen this. It's not necessarily how God intended the world to be once, sin entered the world. And yet God is still bringing beauty and redemption from that.
Well, that's it for now. Guys, if you have questions about this, if you have stuff to add, questions you want answered, send those to info@thetownchurch.org, and we'll address them or pretend we didn't see them if we don't know the answers. So next week we finish Luke 9. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that'll be starting in verse 51 and going to the end. Yeah.
6 weeks in
6
chapter
weeks
9.
In chapter 9. I feel like we have a little mini sermon series in here, and it's all about weakness, which is wild. So read ahead, pray about what God would do through his word. And then also, Vince asked some great questions at the beginning of this about where are you experiencing weakness and what does God have for you? Pray about that. And come prepared to worship next week. We'll see you.
Adios.